Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 10 of The Soapbox. We are the Babbling Idiots. The 10th episode is quite a milestone, but it's not that big of a milestone. Patrick thought it would be a good idea for us to start talking about the right a little more because I often like to complain about the left, but we obviously have things to say about both sides. So that's basically what our discussion was today, but we went off on some other topics. So let me just introduce you to our discussion. Thanks for listening.
That that bathroom thing though.
Yeah.
I'm I know like it's really interesting to me just because like I've made this argument before, but like transgendered people have probably already been going into the bathrooms that they identify with and we haven't even noticed,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like this whole argument about like we just need to not make bathrooms like go towards any sex, or we need to like strictly enforce which sex you are going into which bathroom you're supposed to go into. I don't know, it seems so stupid to me. Like we don't need to have this argument because this isn't like a real problem. I don't think anyone has already been affected by this or anything, so it just seems like people are bringing this to light for no reason.
It's one of those things where there's an issue every once in a while that comes up where people just point out, they say, why are we talking about this? Why do we even need to argue this? It should just be so obvious. And one thing that's interesting that I'd want to bring to light is that, as we've talked about before, the right is very good at kind of manipulating the arguments in ways that'll make it appear attractive to people. So they bring up the fact that this is an issue of protecting our children when it's really not.
What child has been affected, you know?
I don't know where to start with that because it's like you think transgender people are. It's like when people think that gay people are child molesters. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that really think that anymore, but just the fact that there are people, I think that it's pretty insane. And and people bring up Catholic priests are more likely to molest children. Should we not allow them in the restrooms?
No, I think it just comes from this stereotype that like molesters go for little boys. I don't know where that came from, and it's something that maybe I'll look into, even though I've never really wanted to research that topic. But it's just like, why is there that stereotype that molesters are gonna go after little boys? You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
What do you mean? Because a molester is someone that goes after kids. But are you talking
I mean,
specifically
like a
little boys?
pedophile goes after little boys.
As in because because we never think of like male pedophiles as going towards little girls. It's always they go for little boys.
Not as much little girls, but yeah. Like
so there's kind of the stereotype that like pedophiles might also have some homosexual tendencies, and that gets swept together, I guess, with transgendered people.
I don't know. It seems. I think that the fact that the LGBT community, or it's like LGBTQ, I don't know. The letters just keep going on.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're like clumping themselves together, I get that it's like so that they can support each other and make a stronger interest group and such. But it also associates all the problems with each section with all the other sections, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like when you say there's like a lesbian, gay, bi, transsexual community, then you're basically saying that they're all similar and all the same. And that's like a very important thing because there needs to be a distinction between transsexual and lesbian, gay, and bi, because transsexual has nothing to do with like what gender you're attracted to.
Yeah, I've thought about that before, and I'm especially thinking about now, like who is a transgender woman attracted to? I mean, of course, you can't just say they're attracted to men or they're attracted to women, because I'm guessing a transgendered person can be attracted to either person. But yeah, that's just never been brought up, and that's an interesting point you make, that they clump themselves together. But I feel like people would clump them together anyway, because to like people on the right that aren't okay with any of this, I think just anything that deviates from being whatever gender you were born with, or
sexual norm,
or having the being sexually attracted to the other gender is just like offensive, and so they probably would have clumped them together anyway.
I struggle to think of what they find offensive about it, though.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard the argument that, like, gay marriage devaluates normal marriages.
Oh my god.
I don't understand how, though, and maybe it's because I've never really listened, just because it sounds so stupid to me.
Hmm.
But I don't understand how that devaluates a normal marriage.
I've always wanted to be in like an argument with someone that's like it's homosexuality is a sin and gays shouldn't marry. And I've wanted to just like throw this line out there to just shut them down. It's funny though, when you think of lines that would shut someone down, it never does, because they always avoid the line. Even if it's really good, they act like it wasn't a good line.
Mhm.
But I just want to say, if someone else getting married affects your marriage, if it devalues your marriage in any way, you probably married the wrong person. If someone else's marriage affects yours, like, hey, I don't think our marriage is working because someone else got married. You married the wrong person. It's not on them.
Yeah, and another thing is, like, I've always thought of couples and marriages and stuff, like, other people's failures should make them stronger, you know? Like, it should be like, ha, look, they fell apart and we didn't. We're so great, you know? And it's just like, I don't know. I think that the idea of government-sponsored marriage is something that shouldn't exist in the first place, which is
Yeah.
kind of radical to say, but, like, marriage, if you're going to associate it with, like, a religious thing, then it should be done by religious institutions. And then whatever marriage, like, whatever it does in terms of economics and, like, because of the government structure of marriage, should just be called something completely else so that we can differentiate from this whole thing. And so, like, marriage can be, I'm just going to call it a partnership, even though that has a negative connotation in the gay community. But, like,
Mhm.
marriage can be a partnership, but a partnership isn't necessarily a marriage because it's not religious in any ways, you know, because marriage has this religious connotation of, like, a priest giving the marriage and all that,
Mhm.
when, like, non-religious people wouldn't even see the point of going to a priest, and they could just, like, get anyone to do their marriage ceremony, you
Mhm.
know? So I think there needs to be a distinction made between the religious aspect of marriage and the, like, the government-sponsored economic aspect of marriage. Because well, there might be some, but there's not many gays out there who are trying to force a church to, like, let them get married in the church, you know?
Mhm.
That's not a thing that they should be doing, and that's not a thing that they can do, because, like, the church can do whatever it wants, but the gays like saying that government should let them get married, that's completely reasonable, you know, because the government shouldn't have a bias based on sexual orientation or anything like that.
Mhm. And it's funny. I might save the point I was just going to make for just talking about the right in general. But on the topic of same-sex marriage, I have some other points. Some people bring up the idea of, you have no problem with divorce. That doesn't defy the sanctity of marriage, because of course, in religious traditions, marriage is a unity of people till death do us part, and especially in Mormon communities, you're sealed to your partner, so it's literally for eternity. Even after you die, you're still going to be with that person. So I like that people bring up the point of, oh well, you don't have a problem with divorce. But I'd like to take it a step further and say all these other ways you can defy the sanctity of marriage, in quotes. I can go to Vegas and get drunk one night and meet a stranger at a club, and then go to the drive-through wedding chapel and get married, and nobody has a problem with that. That's not a sin. That's not defying the sanctity of marriage. It happened in The Hangover, and no one was flipping out on The Hangover for defying the sanctity of marriage, because he married what was it, a stripper he married or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just taking it a step further. Like, there's all these other things related to marriage that you have no problem with, but same-sex marriage is just the problem for you.
And something about that is that the Catholic Church says that divorce does destroy the sanctity of marriage, essentially. Like, they don't, like, if you get married by the Catholic Church and then you get a divorce, they're like, no, that doesn't count. And if you get married to someone else and, like, are having sex with them and stuff, you're technically committing adultery and you're committing a sin, because we think you're still married to that other person. So if you're a Catholic and you've gotten divorced and remarried, you're committing a sin according to the Catholic Church, which is, like that's a bigger deal than the gays getting married according to the current pope, who
Mhm.
in
Who's
his
pretty
most
support. Well, he's not. He hasn't condoned same-sex marriage, but I don't think he's like against it.
yeah,
Right.
he's basically said, especially in his most recent doctrine, that
Mhm.
you shouldn't be taking an active fight against it. And if you're a Catholic, you shouldn't necessarily be a part of a same-sex marriage, but as a Catholic, you shouldn't be doing anything to fight against same-sex marriages,
Uh-huh.
which I think is completely reasonable.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because, like you said, people don't look at divorce as destroying the sanctity of marriage, even though this church, that marriage is an institution that like lives within this church, like Christianity, Judaism, Mormonism, Islam. Marriage is like, it comes from these um, Abrahamic traditions essentially, and so like the idea of marriage that we have today.
Mhm.
And so one of the major players in this, like where this view came from, is saying that divorce destroys the sanctity of marriage, and gay marriages don't necessarily do that. And people are like fighting gay marriages tooth and nail. Well, not anymore, but they were fighting gay marriages tooth and nail, and
Mhm.
they're not saying anything about divorce. It's like that king, I can't remember his name in
Henry
England.
VIII.
Yeah, Henry the Eighth.
Yeah, I
He
was
just
thinking about him.
he created a whole new religion because he wanted to get divorced. It's just
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. It's like the whole reason the Anglican Church exists is just because one promiscuous king wanted to get a divorce. So he made a new church. So if you're Anglican, then I guess it's okay.
it was also for the consolidation of power, though. Like a
Mhm.
lot of regions in that area were working with reformers to sprout their own sects of Christianity. So like, I believe Germany was in cahoots with Martin Luther to
Mhm.
make Lutheranism.
Lutheranism, yeah.
Yeah, and so basically what that did was like take power away from the Catholic Church, who was basically all powerful at the time,
Mhm.
so that they could consolidate power in the regions, which is a pretty interesting way to look at the whole split in Christianity.
Mhm.
It's just people who got greedy and were trying to consolidate power for themselves.
Mhm. And it's interesting to think about back in that time. Like if you think of what King Henry did, that was a crazy thing because at that time the Pope had so much power, more power than he did now. It was at the time of the Holy Roman Empire, so it was. I'm not a historian, but I like history, so I feel like I know enough to talk on it without being too confident. But yeah, religious leaders at that time had way more power than they do now. They had access to the whole empire. Pope Urban is the one that sent everyone on the Crusades, so um, he was basically a world leader. Um, but people today just don't seem to like religion losing power, which it definitely is.
Yeah, it definitely is, because there's this whole concept of the separation of church and state.
Hmm.
And so that's why I think that the the Church of Islam and the Muslim population have such like a strong tie, and why we see so much more radicalism
Hmm.
in Islam is because those institutions still have so much power and so much um what's the word,
You were talking,
influence.
yeah.
They have so much influence over their people that
Mhm.
it spurns more radicalism almost. And I mean, this isn't not a perfect comparison at all, but you just said how Pope Urban essentially sent people on crusades,
Mhm.
and that shows how much power Christianity had at that time. So
Mhm.
you could argue that like that shows the same thing with like these terrorist attacks. It shows how much power Islam has over the Muslim population right now.
Mhm.
But it's not a perfect comparison at all. But I'm just making a rough comparison.
I mean, it is that idea that religious leaders are also world leaders is still relevant today in the Islamic world because Ali Khamenei is the president, isn't what's the Ayatollah? Isn't that the title for the leader of Iran?
The supreme leader, yeah. They also
Yeah.
have a president, but
Mhm.
does not have as much power as the supreme leader at all.
Yeah. So back during the Iranian Revolution, it was Ayatollah
Khomeini.
Ruhollah Khomeini, and now
Yeah.
it's Ali Khamenei. So both of them being the Ayatollah, they have political power and they have religious power.
They have so much political power.
Yeah, and with the Islamic State, it's now Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi.
Is he a caliph?
I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, a caliph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caliph.
I think he is. He might be considered one. But that's another example. Just all throughout Islamic history, the caliph is a political and religious leader, and a reign of an Islamic empire is considered a caliphate, like as we call a dynasty in Chinese history, or dynasty might be kind of a term for all civilizations. But yeah, so you can think of what's going on in Iran and Syria now with the civil war as a modern day example of the unity of church and state. And there are people that argue when the Christian right wants to unify church and state, they say, you know how you're always complaining about the Middle East? Well, that's because they have the unification of church and state. That's why they have these problems to a certain extent.
Yeah. I mean, you can't directly say that, but there definitely is a correlation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing this, we've been seeing this split, and it seems like whenever a religion starts to get big, it decides to have this huge split. So we have the Protestant religions and the the Protestant Christians, the Catholic Christians, and the Orthodox Christians. And then we have the Sunnis and the Shiites, So it's interesting to see how religions fight against each other too, just because of differences of ideas, which kind of goes into how people say that terrorists aren't really Muslim. They are, and you've said this a million times, and it's all about that interpretation of the Quran, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to associating with a certain religion, I think when a lot of people say I'm a Christian or I'm a Muslim or I'm this or that, there's a lot that goes along with it. So if you're a Christian, then you're expected to abide by all these different religious doctrines and beliefs. But in order to consider yourself of a certain religion, I don't think people really understand how simple the prerequisites are. In order to be a Christian, to be considered a Christian, you have to believe that there's one God, and you have to believe that Jesus Christ is his prophet.
Mm-hmm.
In order to be
not his prophet, his son,
but he's also a prophet. In order to consider yourself a Muslim, you have to believe that there's one God and that his prophet was Muhammad. That's the only differences between Christianity and Islam. So at the bare minimum, the only difference between Christianity and Islam is who you think God sent on the earth to earth to be the prophet.
An interesting
but
thing,
people have a problem with that simplification.
What?
People have a problem with because everyone believes that to be of a certain religion, it's not just as simple as saying, I believe there's this many gods and this is the god or gods and this is the person that was the prophet. There's all these beliefs that go along with it. But when people argue, those people over there aren't Muslims and those people there are saying that these people here aren't Muslims, well, they all literally are Muslims because they all believe that there's one God and that his prophet was Muhammad. And then when you have Christians that say those people aren't Christian and those people are saying that those people aren't Christian, then, well, they're wrong because they're all Christian based on the fact that they believe there's one God and that Jesus Christ was his son and prophet.
Oh, two interesting things that made me think about is, one, Muslims don't believe, they think that Christianity is a weak monotheism because of the Trinity, which, is saying that there's, 3 parts to one God.
Yeah.
They look at that as, terrible. They're like, you're saying that there's 3 gods, essentially, from their point of view. And any Christian will argue, no, we're saying there's 3 different ways God can express himself, but to a Muslim, they're like, no, you're saying there's 3 gods. You're not saying that there's one true God, which is supposed to be the central doctrine of your religion.
Mm-hmm.
So Muslims look at Christians as kind of misguided, you know, and that's really interesting. And then another thing is Mormons are not considered Christian by most because of John Smith
Yeah,
being a
because he's
prophet
considered
almost.
the prophet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and all of their, you know, kind of different beliefs that separate them from Christianity.
We had a. I've wanted to talk about this for so long, but I forgot about it. We've had some amazing discussions in my religion class this semester, but when we did a chapter on the new religious movements, and of course one of them was Mormonism, and then we also did Seventh Day Adventist and Jehovah's Witnesses, which are a really interesting group. We should talk about them sometime. But our discussion that day was, should these groups, I think Mormons in specific we were talking about, should Mormons be considered a movement in Christianity, or should we consider Mormonism its own religion? And I think I argued on both points, but the one I remember the best was arguing that it might not be a part of Christianity. And my rationale for it was based on what people identify as. If you ask a Muslim what religion they follow, whether they're Sunni or Shia or even Sufi, they're going to say, I'm a Muslim. If you ask a Christian whether they're Presbyterian, Methodist, Lutheran, to put in broader terms, just Protestant, Catholic, or Eastern Orthodox, they're going to say, I'm a Christian. If you ask a Mormon what religion they are, they're going to say, I'm a Mormon. So that's an interesting difference, because we usually consider Mormons to be Christian, but when you ask someone what religion they are, when in all these other major religions, they might be in different sects and have these differences between them, but they all say that they're with this one religion. And then when you ask Mormons what religion they are, they say Mormon ahead of Christian instead of being a Christian. Then you might be able to say, hey, there's a difference there. I remember arguing on the other side, but I don't remember what that argument was.
And I mean, most of the high religious leaders for Christianity, even though it's so divided, they basically are like, no, Mormons are not Christians, you know. And the fact that they can accept each other, you know, like the fact that the Pope can say, oh yeah, all these Protestants are Christian, even though we don't exactly have the same beliefs, but they can't accept Mormons as Christian. That's a big deal to me, at least, because that shows, you know, how different the two kind of things are, Mormons and Christians, you know.
But you can argue that's just similar to what people say when they start using the no true Scotsman fallacy, saying that these people, a conservative Christian will say these people that support same-sex marriage, they're not Christians. So the Pope saying that Mormons aren't real Christians, you can consider it just a no true Scotsman, or you can consider it because they are radically different. Now, what we were talking about with same-sex marriage, I had another point to bring up there is it's the idea I was just talking about, where I might want to bring this up later because it just kind of goes with the whole right, is the right-wing mantra of don't tread on me. Whenever I see this on license plates, you see them on a lot of license plates around here. Even though we typically think of this area as liberal, I see those license plates and I say, hell yeah. I like the mantra, don't tread on me, because it's American freedom. It's, don't tread on me. I do what I want. But they use it on these, they use that mantra on these points of not treading on me, as in like, don't tax me a whole lot. Don't take my guns away. But that's not a good mantra for the Republican Party, because there's a lot of things where they do tread on people, such as same-sex marriage, or there's a bunch of other issues where they're abortion issues where they're telling people what to do. So your mantra can't be "don't tread on me" when about half of your beliefs involve not telling people what to do, and half of them do.
Yeah, and kind of going into what you said about how Republicans use that for taxing. They're like, don't tread on me, like don't tax me too much. there's been this whole argument in our campaign recently about like taxes and stuff, even though the IRS is drastically underfunded right now.
Mhm.
Like the IRS basically does not have the resources to audit the average person anymore,
Mhm.
and just they don't have any money funded to them just because of how we've had a Republican majority in Congress a lot of the time. They've just slowly been chipping away at the IRS's funding. So I mean, you're saying that like that taxing is undemocratic and stuff, but and then Cruz with his whole thing about how the IRS needs to be completely shut down, and it's just the IRS is a shamble of its previous self, and I personally think that it needs to be funded more because there's people out there getting away with tax evasion and stuff,
Mhm.
and we can talk about people stealing resources through welfare and stuff, but if you're not paying your taxes, I look at that as like a higher offense than taking advantage of welfare programs.
I've been struggling a little bit lately with the issue of whether I'm for these social policies like welfare and food stamps and everything, because I think my thought process behind it is we should be providing opportunities for people to find better jobs and being able to support themselves. It's the idea of not just giving people support, but giving people the opportunity to support themselves. And that's why providing better access to education is a very big deal to me. Like Michael was explaining last class, it's not a matter of just giving people free college. It's not that simple, but you need to address the root problem of why college is so expensive. He explained that a lot better than I can. But it's at the same time, though, people argue when people say all my tax money is going to food stamps or going to welfare. People specifically on the issue of food stamps like to say it's a very small percentage of your taxes that go to food stamps. It's not as much money as you think, and that's an attractive idea. But I don't want to argue whether or not we should give people food stamps. My argument is why are people so poor that they can't even feed their children? That's a problem to me. We need to fix that. We don't need to argue over whether we should give people food stamps or not, because they should be able to have a job where they can support their family. And if you need to address the root cause of that, and I think we need to provide better education that's affordable, not just giving people free college, but finding the way to actually make it more affordable. I think Michael was talking something about how somebody subsidizes student loans, and so the students take out all those loans. Yeah, I can't explain it like he did, but there's certain issues where I think there's a more root problem. So I say, why are we arguing over this? We need to address the root problem of this, so we don't even have to have this argument.
I think a big deal for me is how much education, like not higher education, but like up to high school, is used as a political tool. Like they say that we need to fund education more and we need to put more money into making sure kids like everywhere reach standards, but it's just not about money anymore. For example, DC per student has more money, they have more money invested in each student than Fairfax County.
Mhm.
And it's like it's a lot. I don't remember the exact figure, but it's in the tens of thousands of dollars per student. And so that just shows that it's not about money anymore, and we need to be looking at the social aspects of learning. For example, have you heard about, I think it's 10,000 words?
It's 10 million words, I
10
think.
million words, yeah.
Something like that. I remember it's a million. I don't know if it was like 10 or 30. It was something like that.
I think it's
But yeah, I know it is, but just explain it.
Okay. Basically, the premise is that kids in lower income neighborhoods, they don't hear words and they don't read words as like they don't read as many as someone in a higher income, because basically when a kid comes home from school in a lower income neighborhood, both of his parents are going to be at work because they're struggling to support themselves. So he's going to be isolated and he's not going to hear as many words, and that will lead to a weaker sense of language development.
Mhm.
And that's something that putting more money into school can't fix.
Yeah.
but there's no obvious fix for that either. It's not like we can tell parents like you need to get home earlier and talk to your kid more. Like
Yeah.
that's just not a thing that can happen. And on top of that, there's this kind of thing where the variation of the words is going to be less too, because someone who heard less words in their childhood is going to speak less words to their children.
Mhm.
So it's this whole perpetuating problem, and it's like a trend that we see in all sorts of regards in lower income parts of America, not just with education, but with things like economics and crime and stuff like that. That there's this problem with American society where when there's a problem, it perpetuates through generations, and it just doesn't stop, essentially.
Mhm.
So
The place where I heard that was in a Freakonomics podcast episode where they were talking about that specifically, because I think there's a program that aims to help lower income people, attempts to help them to talk to their kids. And of course, as you were saying, it's not as simple as just telling them to talk to their kids, but they aid in fostering a good, helping lower income parents foster a good relationship with their kids. But it was also in one of their books, and actually it might have been in one of Malcolm Gladwell's books. They were either Malcolm Gladwell or Stephen Dubner were talking about how we typically think that lower income students don't do well in school. It's not that they don't do well in school. It's that lower income and middle and higher income students make the same gains in school. It's just that lower income students are, of course, at a lower level. So they'll both gain the same amount of knowledge, but they, of course, the lower income students are already way below. So the problem isn't what they're doing in school, it's what they're doing out of school. And out of school is where the middle and higher income students make the gains. So one of his arguments was not just when they go home, it's over breaks over the summer, 2 or 3 months. So he's saying when middle to high income students go home for the summer, they still learn. And to put it with every day when they go back home, you were talking their parents are home more. Not only are they home more, but their parents are usually more educated, so they use more words with their kids, more complicated words. But also they're surrounded by books, and of course, all ranges of incomes usually have a TV. They might or might not have a TV actually, but it's not just the parents; it's all the things that the kids are surrounded with, and those middle to high income kids are also more likely to go out and be with other kids because they're in situations that foster trust and development and being able to go outside of your house. You know, kids whose parents are gone all day, they can't just go outside their house. It's not safe for them.
yeah.
So he was talking about over the summer, these middle to higher income students make the gains, and the lower income students don't make any gains. So he was proposing an idea that offends a lot of people. He was saying, what if we made summer vacation just 1 week shorter, just as an experiment to see if it makes a difference in the amount of gains that lower income students make?
So would this be across the nation, or would it be just for these lower income areas?
I don't remember exactly, but it's not like, hey, let's do this. I'm just going to put that idea out there. So he's not like coming up with hey, okay, these places are going to do this, and this is how we're going to see if it works out. It was just one of those ideas like, from what I've seen, outside of school, lower income students don't make gains, and middle to high income students do make gains. Well, what if we made summer 1 week shorter? That's basically the extent of what he said.
I don't know if that would really do anything, though, because if you think about how snow days operate, and then when they just shove a couple days at the end of the school year, you're just sitting there, basically. Like, the teachers don't have anything to do. They have these agendas that only go on for so long. And it's like, what are you going to learn extra in a subject with 1 week? Like, that would make sense if they were just learning continuously, but there's like a set amount of things you're supposed to learn in a class, especially with the No Child Left Behind policies and all that. So basically, if you just added a week, they would just extend the like time
Hmm.
it would take to learn all those things instead of adding more to learn.
Well, then you put another week's worth of material in there, I guess. I guess that's how it would. But it's just a bare bones idea. Like, hey,
Yeah.
that might work. That might do something.
Okay,
And
hold on a second.
but I want to get back to. We just keep going back to the same-sex marriage thing because I know we're trying to talk about stuff on the right. Another point I have is and this doesn't just go for same-sex marriage. It's if your only rationale for an argument is because of your religion, because if your only argument is that God said this, then it's not a good argument. You need to have some legitimate earthly reasons why you believe that's the correct way. I'm completely in support of people using religious ideas as their arguments, but if it's the only one, then it doesn't work. Liberal Christians, I can say we believe in same-sex marriage because we believe God wants everyone to love each other, and I don't think God would care who you love. But it's not the only argument. There's arguments of it's none of your damn business who people marry. There's other arguments, and I'm sure there's other arguments. Some people could say that's the case with abortion, but they seem to have a more earthly explanation, saying that it's murder, which isn't. I don't know if that's specifically said in the Bible. So that might be a more earthly, as I'm saying it,
Yeah, and that's
argument.
that's completely up to debate too. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
I struggle myself with determining if abortion is murder or not. You know.
Mm-hmm. This is something I wanted to write about for a while, and I'll get around to it. But we talked about guns in the episode that we scrapped, and I'd like to talk about it again sometime soon. This is another thing that the right does. I mean, just in general, all these points I say, this is another thing the right does. The main thesis here is just that the right lies about a lot of stuff. And with issues like abortion and gun control, they're lying in that they're painting, they're broadly painting what liberals believe about something. So there's no liberal out there, there's the vast majority of liberals believe that there's a point in pregnancy where there should not be an abortion. And that's shown in what abortions actually take place. There's most abortions are very early. And no matter how liberal you are, you'll agree that aborting aborting a fetus in the third trimester it just doesn't seem right.
Mm-hmm.
But they paint it as liberals wanting to abort anybody, and so the thing that liberals have to do is go out there and say, no, we don't believe in that. We believe there's a certain window where women should have access to an abortion, and we can't say it's completely the right's fault for lying. It's also the left's fault for not standing up and saying, hey, no, that's not what we believe in. So it's one of those things where there has to be, there could be some level of agreement as long as the right isn't going to say conception is the moment life begins. And that's, it's one of those things where this argument isn't going to end because that's not something you can scientifically prove.
And the thing is, the idea of a trimester it's almost arbitrary because like the thing is you can't divide it exactly. You can't be like, this is where the third trimester started, you know? It can only be estimated. And so if you say like, well, why couldn't we abort the baby one day after? Or why is it okay to abort the baby one day sooner? You can keep pushing the boundary a little bit more and more. And so then the conclusion is that life begins at birth. But then you're like, well, miscarriages happen all the time, and you know that's not like most like some young people will be like, oh my god, that's so terrible. But older people who are trying to get pregnant will tell you like, oh, miscarriages happen all the time. And in third world countries, a miscarriage is no big deal at all because of how often it happens. So then at that point, is it like bad to do an abortion, you know? And it's you can't end it because there's no definitive barrier and you can keep pushing it either way, you know?
Mhm. And I'd like to get more into complaining about certain people on the right because there's so many that I despise. But there's been so many spicy things in the debates this election cycle. But there's one that just keeps bothering me. It's Mike Huckabee earlier in the cycle when everyone was still on, nobody dropped out yet. He said they were talking about abortion, and he said scientists have proven that life begins at conception. What? Like, it's not something you can't prove when life begins. It's something that people argue. It's a philosophical debate.
Yeah.
Scientists have not looked at all. It's not even something scientists look at. It's like if you want to debate whether climate change is real or not, at least that's something that scientists look at. They look at, hey, here's what's going on. This is why climate change is happening. It's this thing. Scientists don't even look at when life begins in humans. So it's frustrating when he says, like, scientists have shown this when it's something that they don't even look for, let alone have shown or proven. But then, of course, when it's things like being gay is a choice, or climate change is real, or evolution is real, all those things that science has actually proven, it's just all bunk to him.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. The Republican side of social issues is something that I can rarely get behind, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just because they talk with absolute certainty on things that you can't be certain on, like you just said. And I think that's a part of the reason that people find it persuasive, though, is because they seem so sure of themselves. They have to be right, you know? But it's just, you're not even wrong. It's just you're not being applicable. I can't even take you seriously, and there's not even a conversation that you can have about this. So it just makes me steer clear of the Republican side of things on social issues a lot.
Mm-hmm. That just keeps coming back and bothering me. Another person on the right who I want to talk about, but I really don't. It's a good thing she's not really relevant anymore. Michelle Bachmann was so insane. Can we talk about her for like 30 seconds?
Yeah,
because I can only stand her for so long. I can't even explain. Like, you just have to watch her. She's so religious. She makes Ted Cruz look like a militant atheist. Like, she's one of those Christians that believes like that the end times are coming, and she's like happy for it. Like, she's happy that there's going to be like an apocalypse and she's going to be selected to go to heaven, which she's not, because she's a horrible person. Like, I don't even want to talk about her. Like, I want to explain how crazy she is, but I just can't. I don't want to talk about her, but I tried to.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's just some people on the right now. Like, Bill O'Reilly used to be the definition of like a right-wing conservative. And now when I look at Bill O'Reilly, I don't even think he's that bad because there's so many crazy people right now.
Carly Fiorina's Bad Sheep commercial. Have you seen that?
No.
It almost sounds like a cult's commercial. Like, it's so attacky against other conservatives, and it's basically calling everyone sheeple for the previous like governors, like supposedly fake conservative economic policies. And the problem is, like, it's not well done at all.
Mm-hmm.
The production is terrible, and it's literally a guy in a sheep costume with red eyes, and he'll like throw his head towards you, like looking directly at the camera, and then like overlaid with the noise of 1,000 sheep buying, and then like it's the worst thing I've ever seen in a commercial. And that person is who Cruz decided to nominate as his VP, and that person could have been VP if Trump like dropped out magically or something. Like, it's just these people, they're doing the craziest things and they don't get any consequences for it. That's what I keep seeing on the Republican side of things. Like, Trump is doing the craziest shit that we have ever seen in a primary ever, and he's getting support for it. And it's just, why aren't there any consequences, for their actions and for what they say? And I don't know, it just doesn't make sense to me.
It's like there's so many people on the right. There's more people on the right that are crazy, but here's how I explain it. Like, the politicians on the right are way crazier than the politicians on the left. But the like people on the left, to me, are crazier than the people on the right. Although, like, I don't feel good saying that because the people on the right, I don't want to generalize, but like a lot of them are really crazy religious people.
I think it's just because of how crazy politicians seem on the right. It makes people on the left seem feel entitled. Basically, they're like, look, we're not them. That makes us smart. That makes us better. And that's when you get this whole like social justice warrior vibe off of it, because it makes them think that they're elite and that they're above these other people. And they're never going to say it, no, because that would be wrong according to their liberal views. But I can tell that that's what those kinds of people think,
And it's one of those things, like the other side just causes the other side to get crazier. Like, the crazier right-wing politicians get, the crazier the left is going to get. And the crazier the left gets, the crazier the right gets. This is what I was saying an episode or two ago, where the left is complaining about Donald Trump, but we created Donald Trump in a way, because PC is one of his issues, everyone being politically correct. That's because the left is being too politically correct. It's not because Trump just came out of nowhere and we have no responsibility for it. But it's like, when I think back to when all the Republicans were still in the race, that big stage with like 16 of them up there, if you go along the line to each one, they each have something that just makes them crazy. Maybe except for Rand Paul, who I actually kind of liked. He was like my choice because he's more libertarian. But everyone on there, and Carly Fiorina didn't seem too crazy. I don't know if she's hiding something. But you had Chris Christie, who's like really fat. Like, okay, I know it's like not nice to call people fat and all that. If you're a politician, you put yourself up to have anyone like say anything about you, okay? I don't care. And nobody cares. Like all the people on the left that are like posting things on Facebook and everything, that are like, oh, don't judge people, be nice to people. They're all calling him fat, okay? And he's one of those people that's always using 9/11 to justify pretty much anything we do, which is a broader thing. It's like, I don't believe we should be using 9/11 to just justify everything we do. And there's a lot of people that think that, and I'm not alone. And then you have Marco Rubio, who, as you've said, is crazier than people think because he can kind of hide behind Trump. Then you have Trump, who I don't have to explain. Ted Cruz is a religious zealot. Ben Carson.
Oh my God.
He's just strange.
He was like Black Trump, basically.
And he was very low energy in Trump's defense. And then who else? Like, if there's anyone, Mike Huckabee is like almost as much of a religious zealot as Ted Cruz. But yeah, maybe I'm forgetting someone. But just all the people.
Jeb Bush just didn't want to be there.
Yeah,
that was his worst. That was the worst thing for him.
Jeb Bush is just an awkward teenager. Like, that's when I see Jeb Bush, I'm just like, he's that kid in your math class that's sitting in the back that like no one really knows, and he's just awkward and like no one wants to talk to him.
And he does fine in the class, like it's not like he's failing or anything, but no one really pays attention to him or talks to him, and he just quietly does his work.
But everyone knows his charismatic older brother.
His brother is the varsity football champ, a grade above, and
basically, yeah. No, but like, and then in the lower, in the they had so many people that they have to have the lower debates or whatever. Rick Santorum was insane. He was one of those, like, he was even more of a zealot than Ted Cruz was. He was I don't even remember some of the stuff he did, but he was insane. And then George Pataki, George Pataki. He wasn't even relevant. Who is the Louisiana governor? The Indian guy. Bobby Jindal. He was like racist, but he's not white, so it's weird. It's like, stop being racist. You're not a white person. It's like, I mean, white people or non-white people can be racist, but it's like, it's maybe no one on the right liked him because he doesn't fulfill what their expectations. Like we were talking earlier about, like, people that are born and don't like aren't attracted to the other gender, like anything that differs from the norm offends them. Look, a non-white person's being racist. We don't like that.
I don't know. This election is just a joke to me, and it pisses me off because this is the first presidential election I can vote in, and there's no candidate that I really want to vote for at this point.
We were saying last time, I think, we were saying how every election cycle people say this is truly a revolutionary election year. But this year we're not kidding. Like, it's serious. And, we just complained about every single candidate that was on the right. The left is like a little bit better. But you had Lincoln Chafee, who's like another awkward teenager.
Yeah.
There's how on like Facebook there's the Bernie's Dank Meme Stash page. There's another page I'm on. It's Lincoln Chafee's Dank Meme Stash.
No.
So everyone's just making jokes, granite jokes, because in that one debate he said they were talking about Glass-Steagall, and he's like, "You're looking at a block of granite," because he was trying to say how he was he like stuck to the side that he chose. Mm-hmm. So he wanted to say he's a block of granite to appear strong. So now everyone just makes jokes about how Lincoln Chafee likes granite. And so they'll post pictures of like mountains or a granite countertop.
If Jeb Bush is the awkward kid in the back of the math class, then Lincoln Chafee is the kid who used to be the class clown, but everyone kind of grew up and got tired of his shit. So he keeps trying to like do shit to get attention and stuff, but no one really cares, and it actually irritates everyone.
That's basically what it is. And then Jim Webb was awkward too. Like, the only thing I remember from him is in one debate. They were, because in the earlier debates they always ask like fun questions. Like, I remember them asking the Republicans, "What are your 3 most used apps on your phone?" Like, anybody cares. Like, if they asked that now, it would be like, why are you saying that?
Yeah. Because
they need to get to the serious issues now. But they asked the Democrats, like, what are some enemies you've made over the years? And then Hillary was like, Iran. And like, they made like legit, like they said legit things to show that they're like, they're fighting against these people that Democrats don't like. And then Jim Webb was like, and that guy that tried to throw a grenade at me in Nam, who's not here anymore. Like, he tried to make, that joke where it's like, oh, that person isn't with us today. They make that joke. But so he made a joke about a guy that he killed in Vietnam. And it's like, that's not a good thing to say.
He was trying to get like votes because he was a veteran, but he made it seem like he was like some sadistic dude who enjoyed killing people.
It was, and like when he said it, you could tell he was like, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah. Because he like slowed down what he was saying when he got to the "who isn't here anymore" joke. He was like, and that, like, he said some legit enemy he made that would like make people like happy, like, oh, he fought against this. But then he said, and then that guy in Vietnam who tried to throw a grenade at me, who isn't with us today.
And
It was awkward.
oh my god.
Oh, but then there was Martin O'Malley, who I actually liked.
Oh yeah.
I might have actually preferred Martin O'Malley over Bernie, but there was no real. There was no use in supporting him because he just could not like compete with Bernie or
I
Hillary.
felt so bad for him because people would like the proctors of the debates would straight up ignore him, and I was like, what is this? You know, this isn't right. It just didn't feel right how people were treating him, you know, because the whole point of like this democratic process is supposed to be so that everyone has an equal chance, and that seemed like the system against Martin O'Malley, and I was like,
I mean, I didn't care if they just shut out Lincoln Chafee and Jim Webb because no one cared about them. But like Martin O'Malley had stuff to say.
yeah.
Like I was interested in what he had to say. But and then also on the point of we were talking about abortion earlier. Something that's really important that is kind of my thesis on the argument of abortion is kind of like when we talk about these issues and then we go and say, oh, but if we tried to fix poverty, some of these problems would probably fix themselves. Like I know we've talked about the health of the U.S. before, and we say if people weren't so poor, they wouldn't have to feed themselves junk. But to me, the argument over abortion has a more root cause. It's when people on the right try to say that abstinence only sex education is sex education. It's not. And it's very clear that places that have abstinence only programs, they have higher teen pregnancy rates and pregnancy in young people, higher more problems with sexually transmitted diseases. So to say that telling kids to be abstinent is going to stop them from having sex is like it doesn't work. It's like telling kids to not drink or do drugs. I mean, if they really want to do it, they're going to do it. But it's different because like everybody's going to have sex at some point, and it's a urge. It's a biological drive. Like people don't have a biological drive to do heroin. People have somewhat of a drive to drink alcohol, but that doesn't make people go and be alcoholics. So I think a more root cause is promoting good sex education so people don't get pregnant when they don't want to in the first place. And when we were talking about when Republicans are actually treading on people, access to contraceptives is very important. That's why Planned Parenthood, we need Planned Parenthood. Their job isn't to do abortions. It's to give people access to contraceptives and the pill and everything. So if you gave people contraceptives, they'd have less unwanted pregnancies. I'm not the only person bringing this up. People bring it up all the time. You can't be against contraceptives and abortions. You have to choose one. Choose one.
And the thing is, the narrative for being against abortion is all that life begins at conception, right? So if you're blocking conception, then you're not destroying any life, you know? You're just preventing any like new life from happening. So if they're arguing against birth control, then what they're basically saying is that life doesn't begin at conception, but it begins before conception. And then if they're saying that, they're essentially saying that men masturbating should be against the law, which just, like, I'm going a little far, but if you're saying that contraception should be against the law or, like, shouldn't be available to people, then you're basically saying that, like, the waste of semen is like, wrong in some way because it destroys life. And you're just not going to get away from that. And no male politician will ever like say anything regarding that, you know? So you're just being ridiculous at that point.
Well, no, I was going to say that because people have actually brought up the argument. They're like, oh, okay, so you're arguing that life begins at conception. Well, can I say it starts even earlier? Think of the millions of sperm that die with each ejaculation. That's a terrible thing. Yeah, so it's like, oh, you don't have a problem with that, although I'm sure they do because I'm sure they'd say masturbation is a sin. But yeah, there's all these different arguments that the left has certain arguments they bring up with abortion, but I think there's even more productive arguments, like the one of, hey, maybe it's not an issue of whether or not people should get abortions, which of course I think is an important argument. But we can reduce the amount of abortions that are necessary if we provide access to contraceptives and we give better sex education. Because it's delusional to think that telling young men and women to be abstinent is going to stop them from having sex. It's just not.
Yeah.
And to put another place in the world on this issue is a big reason AIDS was such a problem and is such a problem in Africa is because they don't have access to condoms. And you can't just tell people, oh, don't have sex because you'll get STDs. People are going to have sex no matter what the risk. You need to understand how central sex is to human nature. It's going to happen no matter what you say or do. So you need the problem with Africa is they don't have access to protection, and it's very important that they have that. And it's the same here.
And you can't even just say that it's like humanly, like it's human instinct to have sex. Like it's not just humans. It's basically every living
of course, it's biology.
animal. Yeah, it's just biology. So telling someone not to have sex, that's just basically saying like don't be a living thing, you know. It's just you're not going to get away with that. Especially like hormonal teenagers are going to do everything within their power to try and have sex. Yeah.
This is something I want to think about more because I want to get around to maybe talking about it here or writing about it at some point. But with both the right and the left, but in different ways, I see a problem of suppressing sexuality. Of course, that's the way on the right of saying, no, wait till marriage to have sex. That's just not going to happen, okay? We're sexual beings, as you say, any other animal, every other living thing is. Sexual suppression on the left is a little more intricate. It's I feel like with the whole like sexual harassment thing, I'm not talking about like, I'm not like catcalling is okay and sexually harassing people is okay. But it's like, even if guys just like talk about women, they're like, hey, I like this in a woman, that's attractive. Oh yeah, I like this. Then like they're told that that's devaluing or denigrating women. But women can say anything they want about men and what they find attractive, and it's okay. So I don't like this like sexual policing that's going on the left. Of course, like there's a certain extent where it makes sense. Like you can like say sexual harassment, like that's just obvious. I don't even need to say it. There's things that you don't do. But like if guys are together and they're just talking about women, see, the thing is, it's so crazy. I don't know if there are people out there that actually say that guys can't get around and talk about women and what they find attractive. But the left is so crazy that I can't guarantee that doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's whenever I think about this idea of sexual suppression, it reminds me of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because back when I was into dissecting movies and looking at all the hidden themes and everything, one of the themes was sexual suppression, because of course the whole idea in the movie is these guys aren't crazy, they're just being told they're crazy and they're not free. And one of the ways in that they were being treated like they were crazy was sexual suppression. Like some of the examples were when McMurphy had the playing cards they were playing with, and his cards had like pictures of women on it.
Yeah.
And of course Danny DeVito's character, like throwback Danny DeVito.
Oh my god.
But yeah, it's like they were so excited with that because it's like they don't have any sexual gratification locked up in this building. And then of course later in the story that plays out as when McMurphy gets the two prostitutes. So I'm gonna get so deep here. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the hospital can be like our whole society. So I know there's this idea of like over sexualization, and definitely sex has become such a powerful thing in our culture, and sometimes it's a little much. But that doesn't mean we just have to do away with sex and have none of it be in the public sphere. Of course, it shouldn't be in the public sphere so much so that children see it, but I feel like both sides are doing these things that are suppressing human nature. And human nature, of course, sometimes can be bad, but I just want to be able to sit around with some guys and talk about women and maybe do it in a public place without being told I'm a pervert. Or it's not like we're saying anything too crazy. It's women talk about guys and guys talk about women. Okay, that's normal.
It's normal social behavior, yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So we'll wrap it up there. That's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, I think so too. So everyone, thank you for listening, and make sure to check us out on Facebook, where we update frequently with our podcasts once a week on Mondays. And also, our podcasts are on iTunes, so if you just want to subscribe to us on there, that'd be great too. Also, our podcasts are on iTunes, so if you just want to subscribe to us on there, that'd be great too. Thank you again for listening.